And the crime spree just keeps coming. Now we know Brett Baer, Saturday, pulled over in Georgetown. Why? He was talking on his phone, and he wasn't supposed to be on his phone while he was driving, which he pointed out clearly. His Mercedes G-Wagon. That's my wife's car. That's my wife's car. That was more. He was I got a ticket, whatever. Yeah, I probably had some blow on me, but that's my wife's car. That's definitely my wife's car because it was a white G-Wagon, and I mean it's clearly a girl's car, Brett. Clearly, I mean G-Wagon, girl wagon. That's what it is. You take it in, you park it in the same parking spot every day. It's the G spot. You don't need a real big map on this one. It's a chick car, at least in white.
I had so many additional jokes to add on to that. I'm going to stop. But yeah, that was funny. That did seem to be the focus of his statement. I guess he was on the phone and he wasn't supposed to be, so he got a ticket.
Yeah, and that's illegal
very
in DC. Yeah, and good for them pulling over Brett Baer and giving him a ticket. Good. I'm glad to see it. I mean, not that I want to see everybody. You know what I mean. Everybody, if you're breaking the law, you get a ticket, and it's good to see that they that everybody is getting that. They had 56 arrests on Tuesday night. Don't have the number today, but it's probably about another 50, including an illegal MS-13 gang member. Which, by the way, has MSNBC, they're renaming it to MS Now, right?
Yeah.
Have they thought about MS-13? We give you the news headlines 13 times a day. We are MS-13. At least it'd be more accurate, really.
Really, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. That would be,
it really is.
Might be better. Might be actually a better name than MS Now.
Right. So the stats in Washington, D.C., this seems to be working. Robbery now is down 46% versus the previous 7 days. So a week ago, look, the robberies have gone down 46%. ADW, aiding dumb whites. What is ADW?
Assault with a deadly weapon.
Yeah, assault. Okay. Down 6%. Carjacking down 83%. Car theft down 21%. Violent crime down 22%. Property crime down 6%. Now, here's what I don't get. After all of those stats, all crimes down 8%. How do you have these huge numbers and then all crime is only down 8%?
Yeah, maybe you know what? Maybe people like Brett Baer with this phone is up like 45%, and that's offsetting it.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Of course, I don't know, because I'm sure there's a law in Washington, D.C., you can't hitch your horse to like a lamp post.
Right.
I'm sure that's still on there.
Yeah,
and that's probably gone through the roof.
I was talking to Drew Holden yesterday, writer, and he lives in D.C., and he was talking about the crime problem, and he described a situation near his house where a park was closed, one of their local parks that you could go and take a walk and walk your dog or whatever, and it was closed. Why was it closed? Because several hundred teenagers decided to schedule a quote-unquote fight in the park.
Oh.
So there was a massive brawl that broke out in this park, which meant they had to close the entire park. Now, that's not going to be 200 crimes, right? That's not how that's going to be.
No,
it's probably maybe one or two. However, it totally disrupted the lives of the people who lived around this park. Right?
See, that's what people are missing. Ricky told us that a friend of hers was robbed. Somebody came up, took their wallet. He didn't even report it to the police. He's like, what are they going to do? They're never going to find my wallet. I'm not going to waste my time. So he didn't even report it. I don't know what crime this would be, but I've told you the story last time I was in Washington, D.C. My wife and I are just walking down the street, and a guy on a bike, a big black guy who looked insane, and I think he was seriously disturbed. But he rides his bike around. He's like, today's the day I'm going to kill me a white guy. I'm going to kill me a white man today. And he's pointing at me. And I'm like, well, too bad you don't see just behind me about 20 steps or 2 armed security guys. So give it a whirl, Jack. But I didn't report that.
Right.
And I think that kind of stuff happens to people all the time in Washington, D.C. It's a quality of life thing as well.
You just become used to it, right? Like,
Right.
New York is a good example of this. New York's murder rate, by the way, is 1/7 of Washington, D.C., but we did live and work in New York. 1/7. We did live and work in New York for a while, and it becomes part of your life to ignore things that everyone else in the country would never ignore. Right, like
the best example of this, Stu, is you and I on the subway. We were waiting for the subway, and you and I were just talking about something, and we didn't realize we stood there for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and I think you said, "I think the big one's going to win," and I'm like, "I have my money on him too." And what we were talking about, we had not discussed it before. We had been sitting there talking to each other. But both of us, while talking, were watching 2 rats fight over like a hot dog wrapper or something. Mm-hmm. And it just had begun. And I looked at Stu and I said, "We have been here too long.
Yeah.
We got to get out. When that's just normal, we've got to get out."
Yeah, and I think that is actually part of this. If you want to give a little bit of a break to the crazy people who are defending Washington, D.C. is this bizarre Disneyland, you almost start to delete these terrible experiences from your mind. It's the only way you can deal with them. Like I saw one guy actually post, he's like, "I'm sick of all these Republicans and Trump and MAGA people saying, how terrible this city is and how much crime there is. Sure, I've been mugged. And yeah, I had my car broken into, but this is a great city." And it's like, he had just disjointed himself from those experiences as if they didn't happen and as if that's normal for people. Yeah, everyone goes through those things. No, they don't. Like nowhere else I've ever lived did I expect that to occur.
But that's not the same, which rat's going to win thing.
No.
Where you just get used to it. That's politics. If you're mugged, if it were reversed, and crime was going out of control and Donald Trump was not doing anything about it, and this guy gets mugged, he'd be like, "Of course, what do you expect? The Republicans are in. They don't care about us. They don't care." I mean, that's politics. That's not just getting used to it. Getting used to it is having to step over the homeless person or the drug addict or, walking down the street and seeing, people that are all hunched over because they're on, fentanyl or whatever it is. That's the kind of stuff you kind of get used to, and you just don't see it anymore until somebody comes to visit you, and then they're like, "You live here?" And you're like, "Oh yeah," you get used to it. You don't get used to being mugged. You don't.
No,
that's politics.
No, but you like the person. It was a friend of Ricky's, or talking about how the wallet was stolen. Like, it's an experience that you remember. I mean, it doesn't necessarily ruin your life. Like, it's an inconvenience. It's a terrible thing to go through. But you kind of just work it into that city experience at some level, which is terrible. Like I have friends who used to always talk about the city, and they appreciated the grit. The grit sucks. Okay, I don't want the grit. The grit is nonsense. It is this it's a justification for what you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Oh, it's a gritty city. Yeah, getting mugged there's no charm in that. I'm sorry. You want to have a dive bar that you like attending? That's grit, I suppose. Going to a place where you're getting things stolen from you, or you get beaten, or you get some weird fluid thrown at you and you don't know what it was. Like, that's the type of stuff that happens in these cities all the time.
I know.
It's awful.
I know. And that is the kind of stuff, I just moved my daughter in. I'm not going to say the town, but I just moved my daughter into a town.
Istanbul.
And it's a college town.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said it.
And it's this really nice, quaint, seemingly crime-free. I mean, it has other problems, but I walked down the street with my wife. We were going to pick something up at a restaurant and bring it back to the apartment as we were all, unboxing. And I'm walking down the street and I said, "This is what my childhood was like. This feels like when I was, late 1970s. As I'm coming of age, this is the way the country kind of felt. It was generally safe in areas where I grew up. It was generally safe. You know, it was clean. People respected one another, generally speaking. And I know that, you know, New York City was a hellhole at the same time that I was experiencing that in the West Coast. But you don't see that very often anymore. And you forget until you go to one of these small towns and you're like, are they piping in the sounds of birds and stuff? Because it's like perfect here. No, it's just a small town, you know, that hasn't gone to hell. And you forget about it. You really forget on how great that can be.
And you think about the people who are leading this country all live and work in a place where they are justifying these terrible things occurring. They're not living a life that
because of
so many other Americans are living, and where their towns are sane and they don't have to deal with murder rates 7 times the rate of New York City. So I like, you know, and this is the trouble with this, of course, in some way, is that Washington has tools that no one else has, right? Like they can call in the federal government to take over their town and bring a bunch of troops in and do all these things that's not an option for a lot of cities. They're stuck with the Mamdanis and the guy in Minnesota who is now taking over their city and going to run it in the ground further. It's going to get much worse.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm thinking back to your story from Washington, D.C., just how prevalent crime was there. That guy that said that.
Because you were there.
I was there. I was standing near your security. Mm-hmm. And you can tell they're so used to that's just the norm. They can intimidate you through
fear.
Crime. No fear.
No fear.
And what cracked me up, maybe you didn't notice this, because we kept watching him. He gave us that crazy eye, went across the street, looked back, and we were still glaring at him as if we're not intimidated by this. And he actually had this look for a couple seconds like, did I not deliver the line correctly? Did it not work? And it stuck out in my mind, because if you refuse to be intimidated by this, like the administration of Donald Trump is now, refuse to be intimidated by this. And that is what they were doing it right now, essentially. And their power goes away.
So in Washington, D.C., I don't carry a gun. You know, I'll travel when I'm in a city like that. I travel with somebody who has a badge, and they can carry a gun. And that was the reason why I wasn't really intimidated, other than, you know, go ahead. But my wife was with
the sweet
me.
Silence, the sweet. Bring me the sweet relief,
sweet silence of death. Wouldn't it be bad if you get up to heaven and it's like, great, glad you're here. There's an election next week. You're like, what?
No!
You know, the average person doesn't have that. Imagine, you know, you're walking your kids to school in the morning and they see that. Did you see that guy? Where was he? That came up and he was homeless and clearly nuts. I mean, that's part of it. It's not just crime. We have really sick people on the streets as well. This guy comes up to a mom pushing a baby carriage just on the street, just walking, minding her own business. And he gets in front of her and blocks her from moving. And he's like, this is my baby. Give her to me. And tries to take. And luckily, living in a town where others see what's going on and race to the woman's defense. I don't know if that would have happened in New York City. I don't know if that would have happened in New York, or Washington, D.C. You don't dismiss the quality of life. And I'm really anxious to see what happens in 30 days, because in 30 days, Trump loses the ability to do this without Congress acting. And I'm anxious to see what happens if he doesn't get that ability and it goes back to the way it was. I think the people in Washington, D.C. are going to be really pissed at the Democrats.